Hi everyone, thanks so much for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. Before we bring on tonight's guest, if you've had a Dogman encounter and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio, please go to bigfooteyewitness.com and submit a report. All right, let's bring on tonight's guest. Tonight's guest wishes to remain anonymous. With that in mind, I'm just going to call her Mary. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. Mary, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Let's start off simple. I am 25, almost 26. I have a beautiful little baby boy that's 3 years old. Very cute and rambunctious. I live in a very small town that is very far off the beaten path if you know where to go. And yeah, that's all about I can think of right now.
Well, it sounds like you've carved out a good life for yourself. Nothing wrong with that. Mary, it's been 10 years since you had your encounter. How much trouble have you had dealing with it?
Well, when I first started out with it, it was really bad. I couldn't go out into any woods. I wouldn't go outside at night and go anywhere. Even when there was other people with me, I had very bad nightmares every single night. And when I started telling people last year about, some of the things that were going on in my experience, they kind of lessened up to where I have, maybe 2 to 3 nightmares a week. I'm able to go out at night and, I don't really like going out in the woods, but I'll go on like nature hikes with like my fiance or my parents. And, I'm able to feel more comfortable telling people my story and being able to kind of like not only compare notes, but, be there for them if they have like a slip up or something.
You waited 9 years to tell anyone about your encounter. What made you decide to take a huge leap from that and tell your encounter to the world?
I felt it was kind of like a healing process for me. And I also wanted to help others who may not feel comfortable enough to tell their story, that it's okay. You can talk to somebody. You don't have to feel like you can't talk about it. Because I think that's what causes a lot of issues with people, is that they don't feel comfortable talking about their encounters and being able to know that there's somebody out there that understands what's going on.
Well, that's awfully admirable that you'd want to put it out there for that reason. I'm really impressed. How did you find out about the show?
Well, I was working with a coworker who was like really into cryptids, and I didn't really trust her at first, but when she started talking about like dogmen and kind of describing them after work that day, I was like, you were talking about dogmen, right? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, I think I might have encountered one, and we started talking about it, and she is an avid fan of your show. She is always listening to your show when it comes out. And she goes, you should listen to it and see what other people say and what they experience. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to listen. And as I was listening, I was like, these encounters sound kind of similar to what I experienced. And I was thinking to myself, maybe the best way to help me heal a little bit more is to reach out and tell my experience.
Well, I'm so glad you found out about the show. What were your thoughts when you first found out about it and all the other people out there in the world who have had encounters of their own?
At first, I didn't know what to think because I was kind of numb to it all at that point. But as I listened to more episodes and being able to kind of like comprehend what people were saying, it made me feel glad that I wasn't the only one that was dealing with it, and that experience was not only causing them pain, but they're able to get over that. And I got really excited, and I was like, I want to tell my experience. I want to help heal that part of myself that never really got over it.
Well, like I said, that's awfully impressive that you're doing this show for that reason. You're reaching out to actually try and help people. I'm really impressed. In a way, was it depressing hearing about all the other people who had had encounters because it made it clear to you how many dogmen must be out there?
Yeah, it was kind of depressing because it's like, now that I know that they don't hurt people unless they absolutely have to, in a sense, and that they're just trying to scare people, I'm like, well, it kind of makes me cautious about where I go any time during the day or night. There might be one somewhere hiding and planning whether or not it wants to, scare me. But, I still like going out.
There's a lot of life to live still for you, and I'm glad to see that you're doing that. Before you tell us about your encounter, please tell us about the place where it happened.
Well, I live in Minnesota, so there's a lot of plains and stuff around and a lot of cornfields. And there's like a couple places in some of the big cities where you have like these woods and stuff. And where I was living at the time that it happened, I was living pretty close to where there was a whole bunch of woods. Like it would go on and on for at least a good 5 miles, if not more, from one tip to the other. And it was pretty huge. Some of my friends used to go there, and that's how I got dragged into that.
It's unfortunate things played out the way they did on a camping trip where you're supposed to be having a great time, but as listeners are going to find out in just a second here, sometimes it just happens that way. Please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Well, it was about 2009. I was in high school, but there's like certain high schools where you can do like college courses at the same time. So I was doing that along with high school work. And after the year finished out, some of my high school friends wanted to go on a camping trip. And they were planning it out at least a good 2-3 months in advance. And when they were trying to get people to go with them, they asked me if I would like to go. Now, when they asked me, I've never been on a camping trip before. So I realized that, it's my first time. I'm probably going to, build myself up and think it's going to be horrible even before I go. But I was like, well, first time for everything. I'm going to try it out. And so I agreed to go with them. And when it came to the day of us getting ready and going out there, I had everything packed the night before. I also packed up a couple of snacks as well, just in case. And we all went to kind of like the camping area of the whole forest. And we set up camp and started hiking around, looking at the scenery, enjoying the wildlife, and, just experiencing the forest as it really was. And right about 5-6 o'clock, we started getting ready to cook supper, and it was pretty good. I mean, hot dogs and baked beans, how can you go wrong with that? And after dinner, we started singing and playing music and just enjoying each other's company. And about 10 o'clock, I would have to say, was when I started feeling kind of tired. And I told everyone that I was going to be going to bed. So I went into my tent, and I thankfully brought a book. So I was able to read that before I fell asleep. And about 11:30 was when I was starting to drop off into sleep, when I started hearing a rustling sound outside of my tent. And I was like, probably just the wind or an animal kind of like searching us out, and thought nothing much of it. And then when it happened again, I was like, they're probably really into seeing what's going on. It kept going on for a good 5 minutes before I was like, I gotta check this out. And I opened up my flap to the tent and turned on my flashlight to look around. And, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary my first time around. But as I went back, I noticed a weird figure standing in front of me on the other side of the clearing. As I was looking it over, I realized this is a very muscular, either a really muscular man type animal, or it's a very hairy, muscular man. And I kind of started slowly putting the flashlight up, and that's when I noticed the head. It's kind of hard to describe what it looked like, but it's like, if you ever seen like a wolf head and a German Shepherd head, it's kind of like a mix of the two. And I saw that the fur was like, tannish brown, so it's not like entirely brown, but it's not tan either. It's like kind of in the middle. And it kind of had like that snarl type thing going on. And I didn't know what to think at first. And when it started walking at first towards me, and then that's when I got scared. And I started screaming my head off. Like I couldn't stop screaming. And that's when it started kind of like sprinting towards me, and everyone else woke up from me screaming and started coming out of their tents, and instead of coming closer to me, it turned the other way and went off. And when everyone came out, they were like, what's going on? What's going on? Why are you screaming? And I didn't know how to describe it. I just said, I saw a bear, and it was like coming towards me. They're like, well, do you want to stay the rest of the night here in somebody else's tent, or what do you want to do? And I was like, I need to go home. I'm not staying out here anymore. And so one of my friends, I'll call him Timmy, basically helped me by grabbing as much stuff as I could and bring it to the car. And he drove me all the way home. And when I got home, I was like, okay, this is going to sound weird, but I'm going to take all my stuff and I'm going to make sure I have my flashlight and I'm going to shine it. He goes, it really did scare you that much, didn't it? And I'm like, yes, it did. As soon as I got inside, I turned on every light in the house that I could that led to my bedroom. And when I went into my bedroom, I couldn't sleep at all that night because I was afraid that when I woke up, I might see it. And, I didn't know what to expect. So I was just like, I'm going to stay up all night. I can't do this. And the next morning, my parents wake up to see me sitting at the kitchen table, just playing around and reading a book. And they're like, well, what's going on? And I just said, I had a really bad time last night. I didn't feel comfortable going there or staying there. They're like, okay. And, from the night after until last year, I was having nightmares every single night. I didn't want to go anywhere in the woods. I always had some form of light on in my room or in the apartment that I had, just in case it happened to have gotten in to, the house. And I even became kind of reclusive from everybody. Like, I did not want to be around people for very long. And it just kind of dampened my relationships with a whole bunch of people that I used to hang out with. And I always tell people it wasn't their fault. It was mine because I had a really bad experience and I didn't want to have to put them in to that kind of experience with me. I wanted to try and save them from that. And then when I started talking with my coworker after she said something about she was into cryptids, that's when I started opening up more, and that's when I started kind of learning everything I could about the Dogman and what they were doing with other people and where else in the world that they are.
Your world definitely changes quite a bit when you go from one moment not realizing that things like dogmen are out there to suddenly realizing that they are. No doubt about that. What more can you tell us about its appearance and how big it was?
I could tell it was very tall, probably a good 1 to 2 feet taller than me, and I'm like 5'3", so it was really big. I wasn't really paying attention to everything. All I could tell was like what the head looked like what it was doing with its mouth. I could tell that it had pretty good sized canine type teeth sticking out, and the color of the hair, which was like a tannish brown. And if you were to look at its chest and stomach area, that had what looked like less hair on it than the rest of the body. But otherwise, I didn't get a good look at the hands. I didn't get a good look at what the legs looked like or anything like that.
Well, that's understandable. You're in so much shock. You're just doing good to remember to breathe. So I understand. Why do you think it started walking toward you when it saw that you were looking at it?
I honestly do not know. I think it was because it realized that I think it senses when someone has like a lot of fear building up. And so when it saw that I was looking at it, it sensed that I was fearful, that I was afraid of it. And so it started walking towards me, I think because of that, to see how much more fear it can induce.
You're right on the money. Yeah, if it wanted to get you that night, it definitely would have. But as you know now, that's not what it wanted.
Yeah.
If it wouldn't have moved toward you that way, how much easier do you think your encounter would have been to deal with?
I really don't know. I always ask that question to myself. Like, how much better would my life be if it didn't do what it did? Or, like, what type of actions would have occurred if it just ran off or, did something completely different? But at this point in time, I really don't know. I just know that what happened was what happened, and I don't think that, if I do go into the woods again, that I'm not going to go without some sort of hunting knife or something to like protect myself in case it happens again.
Well, if you do take a knife out into the woods with you, if you do have another encounter, I sure hope you don't try to let the wind out of a dog, man, unless you're convinced that you're going to die anyway, because if you try doing that, then yeah, it's more than likely just going to make things a lot worse. Do you wish you would have done anything differently if you could go back and change anything you did that night?
I think, like, if I could go back and do it again, I would have said something right away, like, regardless if I got ridiculed about it or not. I would try and, at least talk with somebody over those 9 years about it and just try and deal with it as best as I could instead of just kind of trying to hide it and just not deal with it.
Yeah, you're really not helping yourself when you try to hide it from yourself. You can't lie to yourself, you can't hide anything from yourself, so your best bet's just to try and confront it head on and deal with it, so I'm glad you at least know that now.
Yeah.
Present day, do you still have any irrational fears about your safety when you're inside?
Not as much anymore. I think, with the way It's set up at my apartment building. We have security cameras all over the place. So if something were to come in, the police or someone would have been called to take care of the matter. So I know that that's taken care of.
Well, if you have a Dogman encounter and you want to move to a place where you're least likely to have another encounter, I can't think of a better place than an apartment complex with a bunch of cameras. That's about as good as it gets. Before we get out of here, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Yeah, everyone who's listening, if you have an encounter, the best person to talk to is Vic. He is there to listen, and he really tries to help you through it and rethink how everything is. He doesn't criticize. He's not closed-minded. He is very thorough with what he does. And if you have no one else to talk to, you can go to him and talk to him about it. And he'll be there regardless if you experience it just one time or if you have multiple.
Well, thank you for the good words. I don't really do that much. I just try to help people like yourself deal with your experiences. But having said that, Mary, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing that encounter with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks again so much. Have a great night. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.